was talking to one business last week which manufactures 1,500 products which it sells on mainland Europe. They've calculated the cost of recertification at between £500,000 and £1.5 million. And that is a company that turns over about 15 million. So a very significant investment for them. And they regard it as dead money because it's just something they would have to do if they wish to preserve their European market.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the big sort of challenges facing both British but also European companies in continental Europe is, do you want to absolutely keep those customer and supplier relationships intact, or does the added cost make it no longer viable? And can you, if you can at all, look for sort of sourcing domestic alternatives? The problem is that I think you get this particularly in the agri-food sector, there aren't always domestic substitutes available.
What would your advice to SMEs be as March the 29th draws closer?
I think one of the things that we're really trying to encourage companies to do, we realise that when we do these sort of statistical research, less than a third of our members are actually doing any active contingency planning. A lot of them say that that's because it's very difficult and costly to map out all of the scenarios, particularly for the smaller companies, but we are encouraging companies to really try and sort of understand where they are in supply chains, talk to their suppliers, their customers, because very often I think what people are not realizing is that it's the indirect effects that reverberate through the supply chain. And also I think it's important to be looking at, if you are not already using them, freight forwarders, customs brokers, the people who will be responsible or better placed to actually do all the documentation work, to see what some of the mitigations that might be available to you. But really I think a lot of it revolves around understanding things like tariff codes, rules of origin, what are the procedures in place for trading with you as a third country. Those are out in the public domain. So there's actually quite a bit of information available. I think the biggest challenge for companies is to know when to hit that sort of trigger button on the contingency plan.
Extolling the virtue of trading under WTO rules, is that something which is a realistic possibility, and will it be of benefit to the UK?
I think we have to be honest that you can't say that there aren't any opportunities from having no deal. The question is does that, in terms of the trade-off, does it outweigh the impact of the disruption, particularly in the short but also the medium term? If you looked at it from a trade deal perspective or a tariff control perspective, you'd be able to change those much more quickly. The government could unilaterally reduce a lot of its tariff barriers. But that would probably be more in the case of trying to mitigate and sort of offset the disruption rather than it necessarily outweighing the disruption itself.